There's a dish that I never really liked, and it's ratatouille. And ratatouille is a combination of vegetables and a tomato sauce. And as far as I can tell, ratatouille is a French dish that's sort of regionally inspired in the southern part of France to be sort of a farmer's dish that has the Italian sort of palate to it with that tomato sauce in it. So it's sort of an interesting mix, but it's definitely a French dish. Now, the reason I never made it is because I never liked that combination of the vegetables and the tomato sauce. I always found it to be over-seasoned, the vegetables traditionally are overcooked, and it just doesn't have the right textures and flavors to me. But I'm gonna try and improve on it. I'm gonna try and make something a little bit better. Now again, this is a dish I've never made before. This is my first time making this version of ratatouille, of making ratatouille at all. But I've made a lot of vegetables and I've made a lot of sauces and different things to go along with it, so I think I can manage this. I think it's just about having confidence in yourself to actually sit down and try a dish and make it something interesting and own it. Make it something you really want to make and you want to make beautiful. There's a certain beauty, you eat with your eyes first when you sit down to have a meal. And if you make a ratatouille dish that's just, a bunch of sauce and a bunch of vegetables in there and it looks kind of plain, it's not going to be as appealing to you. But when you make it and it's got these sliced vegetables in it with a sauce that kind of surrounds it and has a lot of body to it, you can make something that looks really nice and also tastes great. So we'll go ahead and make this and we'll see how it comes out. Again, my first time making it. So I hope you enjoy it. We'll probably have some tips for what we can do better along the way as well. Ideally, I would have made a sauce from scratch, but I didn't have enough time to really get that started and develop the flavors. So instead, I'm using a jarred sauce that I have. It's a decent jarred sauce, and I'm putting about 2 tablespoons of garlic in there. And I figure if I let that cook for a little while, I can kind of take away the jarred sauce taste. But I think this is going to be a good starting place. And now I'm going to add some roasted red peppers that I picked up. I think the roasted red peppers are going to add something extra to it that'll give it just a little more body. So it becomes more than just the sauce. It's garlic and roasted red peppers, and I'm going to add some basil in a couple minutes too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put these together, let this cook down for a little bit until all the flavors meld together. So this should be pretty tasty this way. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut up some basil. I have some fresh basil that I've gotten, and I've cut up about a handful or so that I'm just going to put in the dish here. So I'll just go ahead and drop those in as it's cooking. I'm near the end of the cooking cycle here, and I'll just get that in there, and that'll give it a lot of flavor. So now I've really upped the ante on the flavor to get something really tasty in here. I'm going to let this simmer for a few more minutes just to let the flavors come together, but it's going to cook in the oven too, so it's going to get even more flavor and the depth will build even more once it's in the oven. But I think this is a good starting point here. I think using the jarred sauce is a good choice in this case. I've tasted it and I think it's got a nice flavor to it, so I think I can really use it. Now moving on to vegetables. The vegetables that I'm going to use are traditional. I'm going to use some squash, some eggplant, and I'm going to use the Japanese eggplant. I'm going to use some zucchini and some tomatoes. I think those are the fairly traditional things that you find in this, and they're really kind of nice. So what I want to do is I want to do individual slices of each of these so that I can kind of layer the dish. I'm going to start off with my eggplant. I'll just cut off the end here, and then I'm going to go ahead and create my slices. What I want are slices that are going to be maybe 1/8 of an inch thick, something like that, just as long as all my vegetables have a consistent sort of size to them so that they look right when I plate them up. So I want to cut them at about 1/8 of an inch. I'm just going to go ahead and slice into them, and I'll cut all 3 of these and get them ready. So I just wanted to give you a sense of what it takes. Now you could use a mandolin if you prefer. I don't own a mandolin, but what I want is something about that size. It's not so big. It should cook up nicely, and I can make the other vegetables about the same size, just to give you an idea about it. So I'll go ahead and cut these up, and I'll slice them, all 3 of them, so I have pieces for each. And then I'll go ahead and move on to my next ingredient. The next ingredient is going to be my zucchini. Same thing, just cut off the end and cut slices about the same size. Now, ideally, I would like the diameter of my zucchini and my squash and my eggplant and my tomato to be about the same size. They're not, so I'm going to have to make do a little bit. If they were the same size, you can make these perfect little discs and it looks beautiful, but I can still make it look really nice as I bring it together. So my zucchini is just a little bit bigger, and that's okay. I'll just go ahead and slice these up the same way, and then move on to my third ingredient, which is my squash. Now I've cut off the end of that one piece of squash there because it was a little narrow. But from here, I'm going to go ahead and cut off some slices that are about the same size. Again, that same thickness, so they should all cook in about the same amount of time. Should work out really well. So I'll just go ahead and slice these up, and I'll proceed through the rest of my squash this way as well. And finally, I'm going to move on to my tomatoes. Now, a note about tomatoes. Tomatoes are always interesting because they're round in general. The Roma tomatoes are a better choice because they're more oblong and they make better size pieces that I could put in there because the diameter is about the same, but I couldn't find any that I liked. So I went ahead and bought these, I guess they're vine-ripened tomatoes. I'm gonna go ahead and just cut them, and then I'm gonna cut them in half. So that way their size is approximately the same after I've cut them. Now I have this nice tomato knife that makes it really easy to cut them. I'm gonna have the same width on them, the same thickness, but now I'll just cut them in half so that they'll fit better within my dish. So I'll go ahead and cut up about 3 of these to go along with it. And once they're done and they're all cut, I've got everything I need to get my preparation done. As you can see, I've got my stacks of vegetables here that I can work with. I've kind of laid them all out so I can play with them a little bit and get them together. There's rather a lot of them, so I'm gonna probably have more than I need. That's okay, I'll go ahead and make a little extra. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a pie plate, and this makes the beauty of it come together a little bit. And I'm gonna take my sauce and put it in the bottom of a pie plate here. And I just wanna spread it around a little bit to make it kind of even. And from there, all I need to do is start layering in all of my vegetables. So this is kind of a neat technique that I saw somewhere, and it was just a matter of just kind of laying out the vegetables sort of in a spiral pattern to make them look kind of cool. And I'm just going to follow the pattern of putting 1 squash, 1 zucchini, 1 eggplant, 1 tomato, and just kind of layer them around in sort of a spiral going around. And once I reach the inside part, I'll go ahead and put another spiral inside, and I'll just keep going until I've got them all layered in here. This is a time-consuming task. Don't let me fool you on that, because it takes a while to lay these out and make them look nice. But what you're trying to do is create something that has a nice visual appeal when you see it cooked. So you're going to do this until it's just right. Now you could obviously make multiple layers here if you wanted to. I'm going to go ahead and make a second dish of this because you'll see at the end I have a lot left over, but that's okay. When I'm done layering them in, it looks something like this. So I've got all these things kind of spirally put in here, and it looks really pretty just like this. Now I'm going to go ahead and put a little olive oil on there just to help them cook down a little bit. And I'll put a little bit of basil and then a little bit of roasted garlic and a little salt and pepper. I think that's plenty. One of the recipes I saw called for thyme. I didn't have any thyme in my pantry. I don't know. I must have used it on one of my last dishes, so I'll have to get some more. But since I didn't have any, I'm like, you know what, I can just work around it and just use the other ingredients that I've got to make it look really nice and give it a nice flavor. What you're trying to do is develop some sort of flavor on the top. It's sort of a spice flavor palette that you're putting on it that really makes it come together nicely. So we'll go ahead and put these things on it, and we'll get it together so that it's ready to cook. So that's it. Now I've got all my ingredients together. It's looking really nice. The sauce smells really good. And I think when this comes together, it's going to have a really nice flavor. And because it looks so nice, I think it's going to really be a lot more appealing than just roasted vegetables. And that sauce is really going to make it spectacular, I think. So my first step is going to be to put some foil over the top of it so I don't burn the vegetables when they go in the oven. They're going to go in the oven at about 375, and they're going to cook for about 40 minutes with the foil on top of it. Once my timer goes off, I'll be able to take it off and let it cook some more. So I'll take it out, I'll take the foil off of the top, and I'll put it back in the oven for about another 15 minutes just to get the vegetables all nice and roasted. So we'll set that in there and we'll let it cook just a little bit longer, and we'll get some nice textures out of the vegetables this way. So after that 15 minutes, what we get is this dish, which is just amazing looking. I really like the way this came together. It has a certain beauty to it, and it really was very, very good. I was surprised at how good it was. Like I said, I never really was a huge fan of ratatouille, but this dish really worked for me, and I hope you'll give it a try. It's not hard at all. I hope you enjoy.